Okay, and we're back with our second drawing. We see we have a 4-piece bathroom here. And our third drawing is going to be this commercial bathroom, but we're not going to worry about that yet. Let's go back to our 4-piece. So again, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out how we're going to vent this, right? We got to know how we're going to vent this bathroom. So we have 4 fixtures here. It's a 4-piece bathroom. And because they're all in the same room and they're all the same type of fixture, let's wet vent it. All right. We have to find out, so since we now know that we want to wet vent this, we have to find out how much we can wet vent, if we can even wet vent all of it. And how we do that is we count the fixture units. We have the toilet here, that doesn't count because it is the one being wet vented. We have the lave, which is 1 fixture unit. We have the shower pan, which is 1.5 fixture units. And the tub, which is 1.5 fixture units. So all in all, we have a grand total of, so if we put this down here, we have, there you go, we have 1.5 FUs, we have 1.5 FUs, and we have 1 FU. Okay, a grand total of 4 fixture units. Let's go to our code book. Here's the table for wet venting, 2.5.8.1, which is 7.5.8.1 in your books. And we have 4 fixture units, right? Fixtures are in water closets that serve not more than 2 water closets. So this is the table we want to look at, not this one. This says not serving water closets. That doesn't apply to it. If we look at this table, we know that the minimum size we can do for a wet vent for a water closet is not 1.5 inch, but 2 inch. Okay, so we start at 2 inch. 3 fixture units. Okay, no, that's not enough. We have 4. So if we go up one more, it's 8. But that tells us that means our pipe size is going to be 3 inch, which is way too big. If we try and fit a 3-inch pipe inside of a 2x4 wall, you're going to ruin it. Plus, 3-inch pipe is expensive. So we know that we cannot, because of that reason, wet vent all 3 of these fixtures. But which ones can we wet vent? Well, if we have 1 fixture unit and 1.5, that leaves 2.5, and 3 fits in our 2-inch minimum. So we know now that we can wet vent this toilet with the sink and 1 of these. Or you could even wet vent the shower pan and the tub and then do something else with the sink. But that would be difficult to do, and we're not going to do that. So that's why we're going to stick with the sink and 1 of these 2 fixtures. Now, the easier one of these 2 fixtures to combine on our wet vent is going to be the tub. So that's how we're going to go about this. All right. But first and foremost, since the water closet is the main event, it's the one that's going to be wet vented, let's connect it to the system first and go from there. So we bring our drain down, make sure it's solid red to show that it's a drain. Bring it across on a 45, connection to the main drain, and we're going to bring it out. And there you go. That's our water closet in the main drain, or connected to the drainage system. Now we have to wet vent it. And this is fairly simple. So because we have the sink here, we have within a certain amount of distance that we can add the wet vent. I can either add it here and bring it down. I can add it here and bring it down, come out and over. Or I can add it anywhere within this distance here, because remember, we have a certain amount of feet between the outlet pipe of the fixture to where the vent has to be. When in doubt, 5 feet, but it's different for the toilet because it's a larger pipe, but when in doubt, 5 feet. And this looks to be about 5 feet. So I have about this entire distance where I can add a wet vent. I could add it here. I could also add it here. I could add the wet vent over here if I wanted to. That would be very difficult, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to pick which one is easiest. And this is where you want to draw light. Okay? So we're going to try a couple things, and we're going to see if it's easier. So we're going to bring this across. This is our first attempt. We have 1 pipe here. Okay, that looks to be about 45 for me. And then we can bring it here, and boom. All right, that's pretty easy. But now we have to connect this tub. And it's fairly simple to do this. We can add a Y like so. If this is difficult, you know what you can do? Rotate your screen. rotate your paper. And there you go. This is much easier to deal with now. So now we come off on a 45, which would be roughly here. And we can just go straight across like so. We can rotate the whole page again. That's very easy to do on your sheet, on the table. And come across and come up. Oh, that's the wrong color. Come down, up, and there you go. Okay, that's one way to do this. Pretty simple. We have our wet vent here. We would add the circle. We can add our circle. There you go. And then our pipe coming out. Here's our connection to the tub, and here's the toilet with the wet vent. Okay. Now, if I was to connect this drain to here before the toilet connected to the wet vent, that would be incorrect, because now this tub is not vented at all. It would have to be individually vented. So the tub or whatever you're adding onto the wet vent needs to be added, like I just said, onto the wet vent. Okay, adding it here is not on the wet vent. Since this is the wet vent, it needs to be added on this length of pipe. Okay, let's try a different route for this pipe. Although that one was probably the easiest and best, we're going to try another one. We can come across here. Let's say I want to go out like this. We'll change this to green. We can do this. We can come out like so and come down. Okay. Now it's a little bit tricky. We have to add our drain for our tub. So we're going to flip this around again. I think because this is a 45, we can turn this into a Y, right? Because we're working with real fittings here. This is a Y, as you can see. That's a 45, that's a 45, that's a 45, right? So if I add a shape that goes out, a line that goes out like this, that I turn that from a 45 into a Y. See that? Okay. Now I'm going to turn my sheet again, and I'm going to bring this over more, like so. Okay. I'm going to turn this again, and then I can just give this one an extra long wrap arm, like so. Okay, that works as well. I would take that. Personally, I think the other one's better, more realistic for what you would do, but they are both good. Okay, so this is a good acceptable way, but I'm personally not a fan of this, so we're going to go back to what we had before. I'm just going to do this real quick. So we're going to come across 45 like that. Okay. Next, we're going to have this come out like so. Red, and we're going to. That is a terrible trap. There you go. Awesome. Now we're going to add our circle and our line to show that we have a stub out. Remember, it's broken, it's not connected to the dot, and right in the center of the thing. And there you go. We have back now our wet vent with our tub connection and our sink, but now we still have this shower to take care of. So that means we're just going to connect to the drain, and we're going to individually vent it, because we can't connect it to the wet vent. So when you can't make it into a special venting group, guess what you're going to do? You're just going to individually vent it. Okay, so we're going to again turn our piece of paper so it's easy to draw a trap. We're going to draw a trap that comes out. Bring our shapes. Bring this across. And we're not going to T, obviously, because you can't have a T on the horizontal. We're going to 45 into a Y, like so. Beautiful. So now it's connected to the drain system. But if we don't vent this, it's installed incorrectly. So now we're going to vent this. We all remember how we're going to do vent pipes. We're going to do a broken line. So what I like to do is I like to draw the line and then erase it, or you can just dash it out with your pencil or pen or marker or whatever you like. It's entirely up to you. So venting, we are allowed to use 90s. Only in venting are we allowed to use 90s horizontally. You guys remember that saying I said, air no care? That comes into play here. Okay. But where are we going to bring the vent? Well, we know that up here is going to be a vent, right? Because we have to have the wet vent continue to open air, right? So in this wall is going to be a vent. So that means there's no reason we're going to put it here because there's no vent in this wall. Because there's no plumbing in this wall. Shouldn't put it here. No plumbing in that wall. No plumbing in this wall. So it's easiest to bring it to the wall where there is going to be plumbing. So let's bring this across like so. Now when it's a vent stubbed out in a wall, we're going to have another circle, but because it's not a drain, it is going to be filled in drain. Okay, this is a vent in a wall. And now we're going to turn it into a broken line. Like that. Broken line, broken line, broken line. Now, if you remember from yesterday, we were talking about vents, and when it comes to this crossover here, one has to be on top of the other. And the vent has to be higher than the drain, or else it's not working properly. So, because the vent is going to be higher than the drain, it overlaps it, which means then we have to break up the drain, like that. And this tells me that this vent is on top or above of this drain. And there we have it. We have a 4-piece bathroom that has been completely vented with a wet vent here. We have an individual back vent here. We have our toilet and our tub. Okay. So now if we move on to the next one, we have our commercial bathroom. This one is slightly easier, but with a couple more things to keep in mind. Now, when we keep in mind those things, it usually comes in the form of when we have to size these toilets. Okay. Now, I'm not going to size them here, but if you guys have extra time tonight, you should size them, or you could size them. Just keep in mind all the code references that I will be talking about and I will be mentioning. So we have here our 3 toilets, and we know after 3 we have to upsize to 4-inch. There's your little hint. And we have a bank of 3 sinks. So we have a lab here. That's 1 fixture unit. Let's write this down. So we have 1 FU, 1, oh, forgive my handwriting, it's terrible, 1 FU. That's a total of 3 fixture units with these 3 sinks. Go back to our table. 3 fixture units. Oh, that looked familiar. 2-inch. And there you go. So we know that we can handle all 3 of those sinks with 1 2-inch wet vent. Okay. If we had a 4th one, we'd have to individually vent it. But because we have 3, we are allowed to handle all of them. Okay. So now that we know that all 3 of these can be wet vented, we now have to handle these toilets. But because this is closest to those sinks, this will be the one that'll be wet vented. It makes no sense to be wet venting these 3 sinks with this last toilet because that's a long way to go with the vent, and that's way too long. So we have to wet vent this one because it's the closest fixtures. That means for these last 2, since they can't be wet vented together because they're toilets, they have to be individually vented. So let's draw that out. First off, since we know that these toilets are going to be connected to the drain, let's do that first. Bring these down like so. Okay, and make it easy for you to do this, eh? Like you can bring it further away. They don't have to all be cramped up here. Okay, let's continue this out, and there you go. That's our first toilet. Now let's connect the next ones. Remember, center of the pipe. Bring it down and bring it around. There you go, connected. No T connections. That's illegal to do on a horizontal drain. All right, 45, boom. Great. So since we know that these three will be wet vented by this, we know we can draw that, but it's easier first to draw the individual vents here. It's just a couple lines. So again, because all the plumbing is on this top wall, that's where we're going to bring the vent. Okay, because there's going to be a vent in this wall. So that means it makes no sense to bring the individual vents for these over here. Makes no sense, because then we have to cross over in the ceiling, and that just is a waste of a pipe. So we're going to bring it into this wall and make the connection in the wall. So we're going to bring our vent, and because they're parallel, I could do one of two things. I could bring these out and just bring a separate pipe over for both, like so, and like so. But that is a waste of pipe. You're doing the same thing twice, right? That doesn't make any sense. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to connect the two. This is a vent. That's why vents, because it's a vent, that's why we're allowed to use T-fittings. You cannot use T-fittings on drainage. And I signify it's a vent by breaking it up. If I left that solid green, that means it looks like a wet vent to me, and I would mark that incorrect, because you cannot have this T-fitting, and there's nowhere for the wet vent to go. It's not a wet vent. All right, so now we have that in our wall. We're going to add our circle to show it's a stub out. And there you go. The individual vents for these two toilets are done. Easy peasy, and it looks really good. So now, basically, everything from this side of the bathroom onward, we can ignore because it's done. And now that just brings us to this easy little bundle that we have here. So we can do one of two things. We can bring our wet vent off of this pipe. We can bring our wet vent off of this pipe. It doesn't really matter. Pick your poison. I'll show you both. So I got this one. I can bring this out, up. Again, I'm not using 90s because it's a drain. I could do that. I could do this. And there you go. Either one is acceptable to me. It doesn't really matter. They're both the same. You could even do this. Just come straight off this like it's a Y. You can come straight off this. That looks very unorderly and not very neat, so I would hope that you wouldn't do that, but you could even do this. Like so. That works for me as well. Okay, let's straighten that up. All three of those options are perfectly good and they are correct because you're following the rules of fittings and following the rules of the code. So now that we have our pipe in the wall, we have to add our stub out dot, so that way we know it's not just broken in the wall. And there you go. But we have our three fixtures. So we are going to draw our pipes. One that comes across here to the center here. One that comes across here. And one that comes across here. Okay. This is acceptable. What is also acceptable, because this is it's kind of hard to simulate what you'd be doing in the wall here. What you would be doing in the wall would end up looking like this. So if we have our, this is our pipe, right? This is our drain, and then we have, oh, sorry, let me change that color. So this is our drain, right? And then our vents on top of that, like so. This is what would be seeing in this wall, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm drawing. What you'd see is you'd have a stub out that comes like this, and then you would have a sorry, this would be a double Y, and then you would have another drain coming across for this thing like that. That's what you're kind of simulating in the wall by drawing this. But if that's a little bit too complicated or you don't like how that looks, totally okay. There's another thing you can do. You can do this, take your shape out. There's your double Y. Okay? Then what you can do is you can continue on like this, just like that tub. It's the same thing, right? It's still loaded onto the wet vent. Either one is good because you're simulating the same thing. You're simulating this fixture being picked up in the wet vent. Okay? So either one of those is good. This might be more neater on the page. However, the other one is what you probably do in your life. Okay? So this is a commercial bathroom wet vented. Okay? So we know that this is a 2-inch wet vent because we can handle all three of these fixtures. Okay? This is 3-inch, 3-inch. And remember, once you have 3 in a row, 3 toilets in a row, you have to upsize to 4-inch. So this will end up being 4-inch. You have our 1.5-inch vent here that's connected with a T because we're allowed to do that. And there you go. You now have a commercial washroom drain plan.